that's what we have planned. And Mustafa, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. So as Russ mentioned, let me share. I have a couple of slides to use, but I really want this more like a discussion. And then the discussion topic here is the use of generative AI. But before that, I see a couple of people that may not know me. So I'm a faculty member here in College of Nursing, but all my degrees are in Industrial Systems Engineering. But I also a graduate of the certificate program. And then my research is in health informatics. And my overall focus of research is workflow. And then I like to start my this discussion with a quote from Jess Ehrenfeld, I think he's still currently the president of American Medical Association, and this is kind of a famous quote. And he says, "It's clear to me that AI will never replace physicians, but physicians who use AI will replace those who don't." So then the question is, does it apply to DNA science? Like, is it possible to say, like the AI is not going to replace DI and science scholars, but the people use it will replace who don't? So we can start the discussion here, but or we can include this to our discussion, but we will see over time whether how big AI will be in DNA science. But before that, I like to do a quick survey here. So the first, I like to ask, could you raise your hand if you have ever used generative AI for any purpose? So when I say generative AI, so it can be OpenAI, or it can be BART, or it can be Claudia AI. So the bunch of options. So I see 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's see, almost half of the population. So could you please keep your hands up if you have ever used generative AI for a scholarship or teaching purpose? Okay, I see 3 people. And then please keep your hands up if you use generative AI like regular basis, like maybe once a week at least, for any purpose. Okay, great. I still see 2 people. So, the New England Journal of Medicine started a new kind of sub-journal called NEJM AI. So basically they want to publish AI in medicine. And then this is a editorial that was published last week. So that they say why we support and encourage the use of large language models in this journal submissions. And then, so let me also read this abstract very quickly. So this is the abstract of this editorial. And then I like to open this to discussion. So in the abstract, it says large language models, so you can consider it as a generative AI, promise to revolutionize many aspects of the creation and dissemination of scientific knowledge. However, their use in scientific writing remains controversial because of concerns about authorship, originality, factual inaccuracies, and hallucinations or confabulations. As a result, several publication venues have explicitly prohibited their use. At NEJM AI, we have elected instead to allow the use of generative AI for submissions as long as authors take complete responsibility for the content and properly acknowledge the use of large language models. So again, they allow generative AI submissions as long as authors take complete responsibility for the content and properly acknowledge the use of LLMs. However, this policy does not allow an LLM to be listed as a co-author. We believe that the use of LLM tools can help scientists enhance the quality of their scientific work and democratize both the creation and consumption of scientific knowledge, thereby helping us maximally enable the scientific workforce to produce robust, novel scientific findings and disseminate them broadly. So again, this is, let's say, more or less a credible journals policy accepting text produced by AI. So what I want to do is, I like to leave this slide open and have a kind of a conversation about your experience, like the people who use generative AI. I like to hear your experience and what did you look for, and the people who use for teaching and other purposes. If you can tell us your experience. So again, ideally, this is an opportunity for us to exchange some ideas and opinions about using generative AI. If you can keep the focus in work, that's perfect. But if you want to share an experience that you use for other parts, like making meal plans, that's perfectly fine as well. So any comments? Any
Hi, everyone. I'm Prerna. I'm one of the, I'm a T32 fellow in the Division of Cardiovascular Disease with an interest in implementation. So I'm hopping onto these conferences, but great topic. And I've used it for like a pretty wide variety of topics, like from making mocktails for Thanksgiving, all the way to like, here's the introduction for my paper. Please identify weak areas where I should provide more evidence. As well as, help me create an outline for this lecture. And then it's helpful because you can say, okay, well, I want it to be shorter or longer or include some, title slides for subsections. So I find it to be really helpful, and I'm never using it just as given. I'm always modifying it, but it helps kind of eliminate a lot of that early legwork and the inertia in getting started.
So you say you are using the set up the first draft of the course outline. Do you mind telling the name of the course?
I think it was like to help someone else who had to give a talk at a like for a course. I was just like, okay, like help me prepare. And I think the topic was like turmeric and heart failure, and the speaker themselves always also felt like it was a really like fluffy topic for the discussions. So they themselves were kind of at a loss on how to get started. So I just said, let's see what ChatGPT has to say. And I put in a prompt. I said, help provide a slide outline for a 10-minute talk on turmeric and heart failure. And then it gave us, kind of 10 slides.
Did you use paid version of ChatGPT or free?
Yeah.
I think at that time I had the paid version, but I've had success prior to that in helping get started with other topics. Like the capacity in which I used it didn't require the paid version.
This is Kamel Henderson. I'm a cardiologist who sort of in the space of health equity and cardiovascular disparities. I would say that I am definitely a huge adopter of ChatGPT, and have used it from everything to, as far as drafting recommendation letters, which it actually does a really good job, much better job than I could possibly do on my own. To drafting full-page reports for contracts that I was involved with, as well as statistical coding. Because it's really good at coming up with how to think through coding in software to fit what you were trying to do computationally. And I've tried it, and it's taken down my work in some of the space that I'm in by a substantial amount. So huge fan of at least ChatGPT though.
So just to clarify, do you use only ChatGPT, or you check out the BART yet, the Google's OpenAI application?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So when you say use ChatGPT, like, do you use only ChatGPT, or did you check out Google's BART, like the Google's generative AI application? Have you tried that?
No, I have not, and I think simply because I think ChatGPT is is an early mover in this space, and kind of brought into it from that standpoint. But I haven't tried other things. I would say my 12-year-old daughter has been trying the image artificial intelligence builder, which is pretty unique, and she's been applying it to build slides for her presentations. That's the only thing. That's the only other software that I've used that's outside of ChatGPT, but I haven't used Google.
So the quick question for both Prerna and Kemal, if it is okay. So how is your experience like developing prompts? Like how do you know like how you are gonna ask what you need? Or can you tell us about like the identifying the prompts that you are using to get what you want?
I'm pretty detailed in my prompt writing. I try to provide as much detail without being like overly loquacious, I guess. I think one way I found it immensely helpful is like writing emails. And it's often a lot more words than I would typically use. So I'll say, I am a research fellow. I'm looking for an academic cardiology job. Help me draft an email to a division chair with an attached cover letter and CV offering future times to chat. Or post-interview, for example, I had it help me write some thank you emails. So I said, please generate an email template for the day after a job interview for a cardiology position, and please include a space in the email for me to include something unique about our conversation. And then again, I'm not using exactly what it spits out, but I'm basically modifying it heavily. And then if it's a little bit too long, I saw on Twitter that you should say, make it a bit more Spartan, and then it kind of, the language becomes a bit more concise and professional when I've used that prompt. And I'll usually often kind of make a combination, like use the combination of the first answer and that second answer to create the email that I end up sending out. So again, I'm not using exactly what it spits out ever, but it helps me, that initial 80% of the effort, it helps me bring that down to 10%.
Yeah, I would say that I think the prompt piece is very important specifically when you're using ChatGPT, and sort of my prompts have definitely evolved. I recognize if you give it too much text, it can take things somewhere. If you're asking it to sort of help edit, which I find it actually is a really good editing partner, and definitely a really good copy editor. But if you give it too much text, such as like edit a whole manuscript, it can take it places that you're just like, all right, this is just a waste of time. So what I found very easy, it depending on where I'm at in the just sort of staying with the editing of a manuscript piece here. If I give it simple prompts, it's very good at actually giving me the product that I will like. So for example, I'm trying to get a manuscript paper that I just wrote. It was initially 3,300 and I needed under 2,700. It was actually able to revise my paragraphs as I fed the paragraphs to it. And I just stated, please lower word count. I went from around 3,300 to 2,500 easily. And it actually still made sense as far as logical flow, et cetera, et cetera. So I found that just simple prompts, you have to be very specific with what you're asking because, you know, the software is based off of really mathematical optimization of words based on the data that has been fed. And so you have to think like, well, how is this algorithm working in order to get you the information that you need? And so I've used it for that and tried to keep very simple prompts. Other times I recognize when I state, hey, do this in active voice, it's not really good at providing an active voice as it helps with writing paragraphs. So I stopped using that. But I think it's an evolutionary process as far as working with the software to get you the best product back. So.
Mm-hmm. So I see Bethany's note here says the ChatGPT is based on data until 2021. So the probably like you also notice that if you enter something, it adds this as a disclaimer. So I believe ChatGPT Plus, which is paid version, is more up to date, and probably I think BART is also more up to date than this, and that's definitely an important limitation with ChatGPT. Or even the paid version says, wow, yeah. So that should be the reason why I search for who is Mustafa Ozkaynak as a scholar. It says I don't know. So that should be the reason probably. I see. Okay, so so any other comments? Any other anyone else wants to share their experience, negative or positive experience? So the one thing it really impressed me is that when I was playing with it, so the first prompt here you see, could you create an example to explain Baron and Kenny method? So this is a method for path analysis. So it's a statistical method. And so it came up with a nice explanation. But what was more interesting is that when I say, can you create an example SPSS data set with 100 participants to explain Baron and Kenny method, so it was able to develop a data set for me so that I can show the path analysis. So I don't really know if like it uses an existing data set to make it up or just makes up bringing some individual numbers. I don't know, but you can even use SPSS to create a sample data set. So last 2 weeks, I had a chance to attend a couple of interesting talks about this area, and some of them they were in our College of Nursing, and one of them is about something called prompt engineering. So anyone heard prompt engineering before? like anyone knows what prompt engineering is? So prompt means like all these questions that we create, they are called prompts. So basically the way how it works is that these AI systems gets the prompt and then matches it to another text and shows you that text. So that's kind of the model. So the common practice here is you create a prompt, enter it, it runs a model, gets the results, and then you refine the prompt to get better results that you are looking for. So it is definitely an iterative approach. And one important challenge here is though, and this type of models are trained to be plausible but not accurate. So it produces a text that looks good, but it may include a lot of inaccuracy. So and that's their nature to include these inaccuracies because of the way how they are trained. So the implication of it is that, so if you are using generative AI for an area that you are expert, then that's great because you can catch these inaccuracies. But if you are using this ChatGPT or similar products in a way, in an area that you are not expert, then you may not be able to catch these inaccuracies. And then the text you have will be less useful to you. So I think that's the abstract that we read through lists a bunch of other challenges as well. But I think this is the most important challenge, is that it includes some inaccuracies, and you need to be expert in that area and able to catch these inaccuracies. So this sounds kind of dilemma that like it benefits most in the areas that you are most expert, and you may think that's when you need the ChatGPT the least, but it is how it is right now. So again, the prompt engineering. This is from a slide, the Dr. Connolly's slide. So again, one of the most important thing here is actually I'm gonna connect this to in a few minutes to a research idea that is in implementation science, this prompt engineering, because if you cannot provide appropriate prompt, you are not gonna get what you need. So anyone else heard that the idea of using this generative AI in more internal databases, for example, EHRs, like so that if we can get this engine and train the engine using our institutional EHR, so that then maybe we can develop some interesting queries and get some interesting results within our EHR. And I think this is a very interesting opportunity opens us, so that we can just create queries and the right queries, and unstructured, we can ask pretty unstructured questions about the patients, some trends or some other things that that we can learn about. I think this is gonna get learning health system next step. I also think this type of like applying this type of generative AI in institutional EHR can also not necessarily totally replace, but can be used as clinical decision support as well. So that the way how we use clinical decision support systems currently can be quite different.
So Mustafa, if I
Yep.
can interrupt a minute, we're having a good lively discussion in chat, which is great. But I think a couple people had questions about equity implications or some
Sure.
things that can happen about unintentional exacerbation of inequities. So I don't know if people want to just chime in, take yourself off mute, and I'm sure you thought about this too, get your perspective on that, but let's discuss, if that's okay with you, discuss that a little bit.
Please. Yeah. So anyone wants to start the discussion about how equity in generative AI?
Hi, I have a take, but I can speak very little because I'm sick. But it is a battle that I have internally with this topic for a long time now. I've been trying to, despite the fact that I got a small grant to try to teach Latino health students to use AI and to enhance the workforce that could help closen the disparities. I think that particularly what you mentioned, for example, Mustafa, the use of letting AI to play with the electronic health records to create algorithm and learn from it because of the inconsistencies with data and the how the data has been collected. I think that it has the potential, if it's not used carefully. I think that is a fantastic tool to start with, but it has the potential to widen the gap farther than it's already, because it will learn and decisions are being made based on data that is existent. So in many cases, data is not there for underprivileged populations. So, or if they are served in a system that is not connected to a big system that has an electronic health record, for example. My example of having to get data from electronic health records that many times are paper and pencil in rural areas in Colorado. That is one. And the other one I wanted to mention, going back, and maybe this is a bigger conversation, but going back, I was discussing this last week. I tried to use it myself for the first time. I was so skeptical that I didn't want to even touch it. And I thought it was even unethical for me to try to improve my own language. So I tried it on my writing and shortening and everything that you guys said. I did write the whole thing myself. I didn't ask for generating resources or references, which I know that could be fictitious references that many times come in. But I wrote it and then I asked to edit it for me. And it was fantastic. But then I was like, okay, is this bad that I'm doing that? And actually that raised an issue and in conversation. So that's point number 2. With ethics, is that okay or not okay for people who might be English as a second language trying to use it to be able to publish, for example? And actually someone said the opposite. Actually, it would be unethical and a disparity for you not being able to use it, even though I edited after. So those are two pieces of food for thought.
Any other comments?
Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
yeah, so this is my understanding again. So when it comes to equity, I definitely have some concerns, just based off the technology, how it works, and my limited understanding of how it creates the algorithms and et cetera. I think one of the issues that I run into is it doesn't give, it's a black box as far as how it came up with the solution. You know, it's based off predictive sort of analyses to predict what will happen next and et cetera. But the data that we use sometimes, unfortunately, it can lead to concerns related to equity. For example, I remember someone shared with me a paper, and I think it came out maybe 2019, and they used AI, generative AI, to develop a better scheduling platform for scheduling patients into primary care clinics. Can be much more efficient and increase, you know, income, et cetera. And what they showed was actually they were double booking a lot of African Americans for slots because it looks like they had actually a higher no-show rate. And so it was trying to optimize the amount of patients someone can see, but really impacting African Americans and et cetera, or minoritized group. If they did show up to the clinic, they had half a day of clinic, half a day of their clinic slot versus others. And so, you know, you can tell it to optimize something, but you really do need to understand how it's optimizing. And because it's a black box of like what it's doing, then you really don't know where that can lead to. And that was a really clear example that sort of shed light to me, like, oh wow, it can optimize to actually lead to disparities potentially or inequity issues because it's just trying to optimize related to whatever business objective that's been presented to it, but not necessarily the individual who use the generative AI to step back and say, all right, what really are we trying to optimize here? And that was to me very scary. Like, oh wow, this can actually exacerbate problems. So.
Great. I think the main problem here is scarcity of data is not same for every population, for every situation. These systems heavily rely on existing data. So the way how they see the world, the existing data. So if data doesn't exist, and then whatever develops the data doesn't exist either. Very roughly. So that's the big challenge. So we have only a few minutes. So actually I like to connect this to, I want to go to my last slide. So the rumors are that Epic is working hard to create some interfaces in its EHR so that the generative AI can be used to do some queries and stuff. So the very last version of it has some simple examples of it. And I think it's the name of the company is C4. I know them because they NPR sponsor. So they're also working hard for like using local health data to come up with more. So they focus more on administrative findings. But the key here, we had a little bit opportunity to discuss is prompt engineering, like how you create prompts in a, when we think about the clinicians, they have a limited time to create these prompts. So if they are going to use these prompts for patient care, how they are going to create prompts. And I really think designing and implementing some prompt engine intervention can be an interesting future research idea. And that's one of my objectives, to develop something around these lines in 2025. So if anyone interested in, please let me know. So I think this is more or less what I have. Any further comments?
Particularly, are there other issues? I think we can go, another 5 or maybe not quite 10 minutes to do that, but generated a lot of discussion. Is there anything that hasn't come up yet? Again, I'm having trouble keeping up with chat. I don't know, Mustafa, if you can see it at all, but we've had some really rich discussions. But I'm wondering, are there any issues that hasn't come up that people would like to raise?
I was just going to mention something. So I've been like binge listening these New England Journal of Medicine AI podcasts, and they're interviews of all of the editors for the journal. So they're quite knowledgeable and they think a lot about this stuff. A lot of them are just computer scientists, not necessarily clinicians. But one of the really interesting points that came up around this black box issue is that being able to explain something actually sometimes allows, our psychology is such that if something's offered an explanation, if it actually is accepted more readily, even if the explanation doesn't really hold. And so there was and further that it was basically one data scientist arguing that they don't like this idea of making something explainable because the models actually become more simple and less accurate if you try to like make them explainable. So it was sort of an interesting counterpoint to this black box question.
So every time black box is mentioned, of course, issue of trust comes into play as well. Particularly, I mean that when you use it by yourself for teaching purposes, or the asking for menu, maybe it's not a trust is not the main player there. But if you involve generative AI in shared decision making, then this black box becomes even more important. And obviously black box has multiple dimensions here, because roughly the algorithms like that, they are all the enforced learning with human input algorithms. I mean the class of algorithms everybody use the same, but differences in detail. But I think the main problem here, what data is used to train your model, because if you use maybe you heard of the Tesla example, like they train one Tesla in New York, the other one in California, and then when they turn on the autonomous driving, the California one started doing rolling stops at stop signs, was not fully stopping, but the New York one was fully stopping, because that's how their drivers train them. Similarly, if the training is different, the data is different, plays much more role compared to the algorithm. And the black box here is what data is used.
Thank you. Let me ask one question I'm not sure how many of you teaching courses now, but I'm thinking particularly of undergrad courses and trying to think about on the other end, reviewing or evaluating. That this is relatively new to me. So just wondering, but I just saw something the other day that I'd be willing to bet hundreds of dollars was totally generated, by AI. And I wonder if the student really had any input or anything into it at all. And so I just wonder what experiences people have had with that. How do you handle that? And I totally hear the discussion and I'm engaged, like it's appropriate uses and things there, but kind of, is there a line? And if so, what is that line? So maybe Mustafa, you could quickly answer, and then we'll let Felipe have kind of last word or comment.
So that's a good question, and I don't know the answer. And then again, I wanted to bring this discussion not because I am an AI expert, but I'm just interested in, and I think it's also the informatics research is relevant. But no, that's a good question and hard to answer in a short time. Felipe, you wanna go ahead?
Yeah, I guess, and I'm new to this area, so I really am a novice. But for at least a couple or 3 or 4 students, these are mainly sophomores. I almost never teach them. I either upper division or graduates, and I hadn't taught undergraduates in about 8 years. but I got papers back, and one that was particularly strange was that there were about 20 references, but what was in the body of the paper and what was in the reference section only overlapped with about 5 or 6.
Wow.
Now, how do you make that mistake unless there was some process by which the person generated the content and somehow generated the references maybe differently? I don't know how this could be the case, because sometimes you miss 1 or 2 or 3, but that proportion, but I had no evidence to show that this was actually fabricated or otherwise not that person's writing. But in some cases too, in class, how articulate the student is was really different. Often they're new and they're struggling to describe things, but the writing was so proficient. And I thought, this doesn't seem to match from what I understand of that person. So these are all questions that I have, but I couldn't say, well, I have evidence to show that there was some fabrication here. And of course, we don't have students talking about like the very interesting editor issue that as long as you stand behind it, then what you let go is valid or acceptable. And also, if you're an expert, you are able to catch things that are clearly very strange. But if you're not, you just put it in and submit it, and there you go, you've got a paper. So these are all maybe not so much questions as issues that I've struggled with. And I guess it'll be important to find out where you can actually detect it. And there is a program called Turnitin, and it gives you some stats, but it was really hard to tell if something was truly fabricated. So anyway, those are my comments.
So I know we are out of time, but my last comment is Turnitin can detect AI generated papers, but there are some applications you give AI generated papers to them and you make them undetectable by Turnitin. So it is I don't know, it is like the continuous battle. Yeah.
Kind of sounds like security, data. The hackers get better, and then you figure out how to block that. Come up with another one.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you all, and thank